Last year, I had the wonderful opportunity to travel to Mallorca, Spain with a group of travel writers. One of them was Abby Algiers, who, among other things, publishes an entertaining and informative What I'd Rather Be Talking About Substack magazine. Abby and I became fast friends, and she has been a guest on a previous Real Food Traveler podcast talking about how to make a real experience out of feasting one's way through Spain. I'm Courtney Drake McDonough, the publisher and managing editor of RealFoodTraveler.com and host of this podcast. I'm happy to say Abby is back for another episode, hot off of having visited Valencia, Spain, and she's come back with a wealth of useful and delicious information to help us plan our visit there. Abby, welcome back. I'm so glad you could be here with me today.
Thank you, Courtney. It's so great to be back.
Yeah, so you were just in Valencia, what, last month?
Yes, I was there in February. Yep, about a month ago.
Okay.
It was a trip that just came up kind of out of the blue and a quick trip, but a great and delicious trip at that. So,
I will link our previous chat on Real Food Traveler podcast. But you, just to give people a little overview, you have a long and wonderful history with Spain. Do you want to touch on that a little bit before we dive in?
sure, yes. So I've been traveling to Spain since I was 9 years old. My parents took me to visit my brother who was studying there. I fell in love with the country from the moment I stepped off the plane when I was 9 and just used every opportunity I could to get back. I studied Spanish in high school, traveled there in high school, majored in it in college, studied in Spain in college, taught Spanish, taught English as a second language. So I've been dedicating my life basically
Mhm.
to visiting Spain. And now as a travel writer, that's the next way that I've been visiting Spain
That's
recently.
that's wonderful. So Valencia, let's start with explaining exactly where in Spain Valencia is.
Okay, so Valencia is on the southeastern coast of Spain. Um, it's about an hour and 54-minute fast train ride on a fast train called the AVE from Madrid. Um, and it's like it's south of Barcelona and on the southeastern coast.
Okay, great. Thank you. That helps us all kind of picture.
Yeah.
Um, So you had mentioned to me before that Valencia has a real cultural identity, which for Real Food Traveler listeners and readers, that's a key interest to us to make sure we're eating locally and to really understand our travel experience a little bit better, and to really understand where people are coming from in a culinary way there. So can you tell us more about Valencia's?
Sure. So one thing just to note about Valencia if you travel there is that yes, Spanish is spoken. Yes, people speak English, but Valenciano or Valencian is also spoken. So they have their own language, which is a dialect of Catalan, which is spoken in Barcelona. And it's a completely different language than Spanish. So you might, if you are visiting Spain and looking at street signs, thinking you're going to see street signs in Spanish or solely in Spanish, you might see something and not really recognize it if you speak Spanish. And that's because it is in the language of Valencia. But I think as a traveler, you'll find most people speak Spanish and also a fair share of English as well. So that's not a problem, just something to note.
Have you ever had a problem when you've been traveling in Spain?
No, the only time I did, I studied there back in 2005. I took a summer course, and I knew this that they spoke a different language, but when I arrived on a Sunday and saw the street signs, I was like, wait a minute. I guess it is really true. It is a little bit different.
Hmm.
So other than that, though, no, I didn't have any problems. I used my Spanish, I used my English. It was all fine.
Okay. Yeah, we encountered that in Mallorca, and I didn't know of such a thing, but some people speak Mallorquin, versus traditional Spanish, and we ran into some issues there a little bit.
Yes,
But,
yes, yes.
yeah,
And certainly you might, run into instances, but as a whole, I think you're pretty safe.
yeah. Well, very interesting. So Talk about some of the influences from around the world on Valencia's cuisine.
So if you want to get specific about like what makes Valencia famous as far as its food, it's definitely starts with the paella. Valencia is the birthplace of paella. And I know a lot of times if a person thinks about paella, they might think about shrimp or other seafood being a part. So paella is a traditional rice dish. Um, in Valencia, the traditional Valencian paella consists of chicken, rabbit, a special bean called a garofo bean, like kind of a flat white bean,
Hmm.
um, and then mixed with rice and saffron to give it its color, and cooked in a very large flat pan. And yeah, so that's really one of the key dishes of Valencian food. Would you like to know other types of food right
Sure.
now, or would you like to talk? Okay. Some other Valencian foods, horchata, which is it's a cool drink, a cool creamy drink made from ground up tiger nuts. Okay. And you would drink this horchata with some sweet, long, soft pastries called fartans. And you can find those all over Valencia. That might be kind of a breakfast or a mid-morning snack. Um, Other foods that are traditional for Valencian cuisine are some pastries called buñuelos, and those are made of pumpkin. So they're a pastry with just very moist and with a pumpkin base flavoring. Um, and as far as beverages go, agua de Valencia is made of orange juice and also mixed with vodka, brandy, vodka gin, and another liqueur. I'm not sure. It depends on where you go to. Different bars have different liqueurs that they add to it.
Hmm.
But Agua de Valencia, primarily made of orange juice, and then different liqueurs are added to it.
That sounds delicious. I
Yes,
assume that's a little bit later in the day drink, not a
correct.
morning drink like horchata.
Correct, correct.
Okay. Let's go back to paella a little bit, because I didn't realize until you and I were in Mallorca that there were different kinds of paella. So talk a little bit about the different types and how one consumes it, because I know there's a certain etiquette to it, right?
Right, yes. So if you are going to Valencia to have, and you're going to most likely experience paella, the main thing that you want to know is that paella is eaten in the afternoon. So in Valencia, a lot of times throughout Spain, you might have a larger meal for lunch, as Americans call it, um, than you would typically. And that starts usually around 2 o'clock. So you would go for paella in the afternoon. And a lot of times restaurants will say you need to have at least two people to order your paella because it comes in such a large pan
Hmm.
that they don't make single servings for paella. Um, so that said, the traditional paella for Valencia is made of, like I said before, chicken, rabbit, and beans, whereas the varieties that evolved with time include seafood as well. And then there are also, if you're a vegetarian, there are also vegetarian paellas that you can order as well.
So would you have to search very much if you were in Valencia to have authentic paella, or are you more likely to find kind of touristy paellas?
Good question. A couple of things on that. The touristy paellas will come if you are looking for paella at night and they serve paella. That's a kind of a tip off that it's sort of a cheaper paella that's like, okay, 7 o'clock. You don't understand that we eat this in the afternoon. So, it's more of a, a, a touristy paella later in the day. A lot of the paella restaurants, there's many, many, many throughout Valencia. There's many along the beaches. And then there is a small fishing village nearby, about 20 kilometers outside of Valencia, where it's literally full of paella restaurants, and that's called El Palmar, and that is a village full of restaurants. So you would have no problem finding a place to eat paella. For some of the better restaurants, it's recommended to make reservations. Um, and like I said before, it's best, you go in the afternoon for this experience.
So just to clarify, I want to make sure I understand. So you're not saying anytime after 2 o'clock. You're saying it really is an afternoon dish. And if so, why?
Because it's okay. So because traditionally in Spain, larger meals are eaten in the midday. It's like the Spaniards take longer lunches, and it's good question. And it also takes longer to prepare the paella. It
Mhm.
takes about 35 minutes to prepare,
Mhm.
so it requires a longer amount of time. And when I said anytime between 2 and 5, that afternoon
Mhm.
lunch/dinner time.
Hmm. I wondered if it had anything to do with the freshness of the seafood, because I'm sure they get seafood in the morning and are trying to take advantage of it at its prime. But it sounds like no, not necessarily.
Yeah, that's a good question. Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Uh, Speaking of the seafood aspect, there are two, there's an, I want to say something else about the paella in Valencia. When I think, it's a rice-based dish. And when I think of rice right now, sometimes I think of like the pointy rice grains that, you would buy at the grocery store.
Hmm.
The rice that's used for the paella in Valencia, it's more like a rounded, kind of a fat little rounded um, grain of rice versus the longer ones. So that's how you can tell it's authentic
Hmm.
Valencian paella.
Yeah.
And if you travel to Valencia and go to different stores, you can buy authentic Valencian paella rice, which
Mhm.
is kind of cool, kind of a cool souvenir to take home.
Yeah, yeah, and there is a difference in flavor, and I only realized that by chance recently, because there's a Middle Eastern dish that my family's made for years and years and years, generation like going on 3, 4 generations, and I went to buy rice for it, and normally would use, the regular average rice you get at American grocery stores, and all they had was Bomba rice.
Right.
And so I thought, well, okay, I'll make it. And it really did have a different flavor, and I really enjoyed the texture. So I think I'm going to change course now and break with tr all these years of tradition and start making it with that because it really did enhance the dish.
Right, because it soaks up all of the
Yeah.
flavors, and yes, definitely.
Yeah, it was really good. So you mentioned horchata before. Can you tell us about some of the other dishes beyond paella that we might encounter in Valencia?
There's also another dish called fideuà, and I may be pronouncing this wrong because it's in Valencian, but it's basically a noodle version of paella, and is popular among the Valencian fishermen because it's made with seafood. So that might be something um, that one could order as well. Again, rice is a big item in Valencia. Arroz al horno, which means rice from the oven.
Mm.
And that's like a baked rice dish made with meat, vegetables, and sometimes snails. Um, One thing I do want to point out too is some Valencian paella has snails as well. So that is another
And would
ingredient.
okay, so that brings up a good point. On a menu, would it say, obviously it'll be in Spanish, but would it give a variety of types of paella, or do you get what you get depending on the restaurant and the region?
Well, for example, when our group came in to enjoy paella at a restaurant called Casa Carmela, um, we had a number of vegetarians in the group. So definitely there were different options. You can order the traditional paella Valenciana, Valencian paella, or the seafood variety, or the vegetarian. So I would say most restaurants have an option, which type you'd like.
Okay, so you'd know what you were getting.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Um,
And I want to say too that throughout Spain, I've noticed on my trips more and more the restaurants are very sensitive about if you have dietary restrictions or if you have allergies or if you're a vegetarian. I mean, I would just encourage travelers not to be afraid to say something or even, um, just I'm celiac, I have celiac disease. The restaurants are very accommodating, I would say, as a whole.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah, times are different. I think they're more in the know
right,
these days.
right.
Yeah, that's great. Let's talk about some of Spain's unique culinary traditions, because I know they have some, and that's one of those joys of traveling and experiencing the foodie scene.
Right. Well, one tradition in Valencia that's very interesting and that we experienced is it's called the second breakfast. So if you're one of those people like me who likes, I get up very early, eat breakfast, and then I have another breakfast maybe at 9 or 10 o'clock, go to Valencia because they have a thing called el almuerzo, um, and or esmorzaret or el almuerzo are the two names for it. But basically, it's a second breakfast, and it is around probably between 9:30 and 11:30, and it's designed because if you just breakfasts in Spain are lighter, maybe a café con leche, coffee with milk and a piece of toast. And then you have to wait until 2 o'clock to eat your lunch. That's a long time. So people need something in the middle of the morning to kind of tide them over. So that's where the second breakfast comes in. And this second breakfast, if you would go to a restaurant that was designed for this, or most restaurants, they'll have peanuts or pickles or something on the table just kind of as a little appetizer to have you munch while you wait for the main event of the second breakfast, which is a bocadillo, like a little sandwich, so crisp, hard bread with it could be a Spanish tortilla. So a Spanish tortilla is sort of an omelet with potatoes and eggs. That could be in the middle of the bread. You could have chicken in the middle of the bread. You could have sausage. You could have beef, eggs. There's a variety of different little bocadillos that you can order, but basically that's what the second breakfast would consist of, and it just tides you over. And then they also have a coffee at the end of it, and the coffee is like a shot of espresso topped off with a little liqueur to add to your day. So, you know, it's just something to look for if you are in Spain and experiencing a second breakfast.
And what time frame does that usually happen in?
Usually between 9:30 and 11:30,
Okay.
I would say.
That could be a little early for liqueur, but it works for
Yeah,
them, so
that's right, exactly.
I'm willing to
And
try.
right, I mean, when in Rome, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Now let's talk about markets. I'm a big believer in visiting the local markets, especially if they are outdoors. That all makes them all the more fun because that's where you get a chance to talk to local vendors and cheese makers and flour growers and farmers and butchers and fishermen. I mean, you're really talking to the real people and shopping
Right.
amongst the locals, and that's often where you can get some great tips from the locals on what to do with what, some of these things that you might not be familiar with. So, how's Valencia's market culture?
It's great. In fact, the Mercado Central is I believe it's one of the largest, if not the largest markets in Europe. It might be off on that, but it's one of the largest, and it is gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous, first of all. Um, and it's full of absolutely everything that you could want. It's full of seafood, it's full of meat. It has um, nuts, cheeses, wines, any delicious fruits and vegetables. Like just you walk through it and if you're going there in the middle of the day, which it's only open in the day, it's not open at night. So if you go there, around noon, you could get some fruit, you could get anything you want, as well as spices and other things that you could, take back home, or if you're staying there for an extended time, use in your cooking, try out there. And like you said, it's really a great chance to not only see the products of the area and the foods, but just to do some great people watching because you see every, you know, older women pushing their little carts, just doing their daily grocery shopping to people stopping in, on their way to work. So it's really a cultural spot as well as a great spot to check out the food. It's an excursion for sure that is not to be missed.
Hmm. My husband and I did that years ago in Paris, and we got some cheese and some fruit and some bread and took the train to another town. And so when we got there, we had a little picnic, and so it was like double the pleasure
Yeah.
from having experienced the market and then enjoyed what we bought there, you know, with a picnic. And France is sort of lends itself to beautiful picnics. So yeah, I
Yes.
encourage people to buy some things when they're at the market. Let's talk more about the dining experiences there because I know you had some really great ones.
Yeah, we were there for just a couple days as a group. So the dining experiences, the one dining experience was the paella. Actually, we had two dining experiences with paella. We had one along the beach, and that was Casa Carmela, and it was a nice paella restaurant. I mean, it was beautiful, and it's one of those restaurants where you do need reservations, and it really is worth a visit if you're in Valencia. And the leader of the group said something very interesting that I'm going to take with me on my future trips. And he said, and I'm not specifically talking about this restaurant, I'm just speaking in general. He said some experiences or restaurants that you have while you're traveling are a little bit more expensive than maybe you'd want to spend. But he said, you're there. This experience happens just once. And maybe spending that extra $20, it's $20. It's worth it for the experience because it's just an amazing, it takes your dining to the next level and the culture and just kind of the experience. So that was just something that stuck out in my head. Um, and of course, I also pursue a bargain wherever I can.
Hmm.
So don't get me wrong. But it was just an interesting way to look at it. And it was a great experience at Casa Carmela. Not overly expensive, but just a beautiful experience for paella. We had some great traditional appetizers, croquetas, which are just, crispy little appetizers filled with seafood or filled with cheese or meats. Very good. We had calamari, fried calamari, um, and tried some local sausages and things like that. So it was really cool.
Sounds delicious.
Yes.
You and I talked last time on the previous podcast about the idea of going off the main drags, so to speak. I'm doing air quotes, um, to find the more authentic, truly local restaurants. And did you find that in Valencia that's the case, or could you pretty much find a truly local restaurant anywhere?
I would say, yeah, I would say you could, there are the tourist traps. I'm using air quotes now that you can kind of tell if they're located in large concentrations of tourist areas, and I try to steer clear of those. But Valencia is full of just little beautiful cobblestone streets and just little court, just winding streets that lead to really nice restaurants and really off the beaten path type experiences. And also, kind of expanding on the paella theme, we visited the village of Palmar and had paella there, and that's the seaside village that is just loaded with paella restaurants. So that was really um, kind of a cool experience and worth taking. I mean, if you're in Valencia and you're like, oh, I don't want to take a cab 20 minutes outside, I would say it's worth it just to experience um, the restaurants and the
Okay.
culture.
I I want to make sure we all understand sort of the picture of the dining day, because you've mentioned, cafe con leche and toast first thing, and then second breakfast, and that paella is kind of a mid to late afternoon thing, because they
Right.
eat heavier lunches. And so, what are some typical things for dinner, and when is the dinner time window typically there?
I would say, I would say dinner window would be like, don't think about going out of your hotel. I mean, don't think about dinner before 7:30, definitely like 8 o'clock, probably 8, 9, 10 are pretty typical times, especially in the summer, a later dinner.
Hmm.
Uh, and as far as, the dinners go, there's a lot of the traditional, like a lot of seafood dishes because it is, on the Mediterranean. So a lot of seafood, a lot of traditional Spanish dishes, such as calamari, pulpo, octopus. Um, it's pretty typical Spanish cuisine in addition to the paella and other regional specialties.
So smaller portions at night.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And if you are going for tapas, which is, something that also happens in Spain, that you would go out, you probably around 5, 6, 7, and those are just, you stop in at a bar or little cafe and you'll have a drink, a beer, a wine, or whatever, and then they will bring you tapas, which are small snacks. So it could be some jamón ibérica, like Iberian ham. It could be little bocadillos, little sandwiches, kind of appetizers, if you will,
Mhm.
and those are before your dinner.
So what if you didn't have paella for lunch? What's a typical non-paella kind of thing?
Pretty much the gamut of, what you would expect on a lunch menu, with the exception of the fact that a lot of the food is specialized to the fact that you're in a seafood, an area on the sea.
Hmm.
They have a lot of, in Valencia and the surrounding, they have a lot of locals. They're a very sustainable city, a lot of locally grown, produce and, food products and things like that. So I would say you're able to find most typical foods. If you'd want a hamburger, you could find you could find the typical foods for sure,
Hmm.
um, with a Spanish flair in addition to other items.
Okay. What about seasonal things? I know there are seasons to in Spain, and are there certain festivals and things that have a culinary angle to them?
I would say the biggest festival for Valencia that they're known for is called Las Fallas, and that happens in March. It actually starts March 1st and goes until March 19th. And um, it's basically a, um, a couple weeks of a lot of fireworks
Mm.
and a lot of fire. And it originates from, it was in honor of Saint Joseph, a carpenter, and it was in honor of um, kind of saying goodbye to winter and saying hello to spring, kind of burning the old, like getting rid of the old wood and things of, and and then welcoming in spring. Now, like the Las Fallas celebration involves, um, there are some large sculptures that are created, artistic sculptures are created as um, by adults and children, and probably about 800 in total, and those are burned on the last 4 days of the celebration. They're called ninats, and they are large, beautiful, artistic um, sculptures that represent different societal things that are happening or different, artistic expressions. And like I said, those are burned, and it's a big event that they're burned. People go out and watch them being burned in the streets, and it's sad because they're such beautiful works of art,
Hmm.
but it is an expression of like letting go of old ideas, of old things, and welcoming the new along with welcoming in spring because it coincides with spring starting.
Hmm.
Um, the interesting thing about those ninots or sculptures, they're all on display at the City of Sciences, the large area in Valencia that contains the like a science museum and other buildings, but they're all on display and people come and vote for which there are two ninots that are saved. So two of the sculptures are saved at each year. It's kind of a parting. It's like, pardoning of the turkey or
Right,
whatever at
right.
Thanksgiving. Um, so those are saved, and we actually had the opportunity to go and visit and see these sculptures in February. Um, and then the people vote on which ones they want saved, and then those are kind of, preserved and not burned during the celebration. So that's kind of interesting. Coinciding with the celebration are paella contests, there's street parties, the buñuelos, those pumpkin pastries, those are eaten and enjoyed. So pretty much every part of Valencian culture is celebrated during this month because it's a very special and sacred time for Valencia.
And that's every March?
Every March,
Okay.
yes.
All right. So happening now. Very interesting.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's over now. It ends on the day on St. Joseph's Day on March 19th.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us some from your vast experience. Tell us some of your practical tips for foodie travelers.
As far as Valencia or in general, or
Whatever you want to
okay.
share. I mean, we are talking about Valencia today, but maybe some of those cross over to general.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would just say, it helps to do a little research ahead of time before you go. At least every time I go back to Spain, even if I've been to the city, I watch a lot of YouTube videos on just, food in Valencia, 10 things I ate in Valencia. I just like to do that just to see it for my own with my own eyes, just first of all, what it looks like and what I might want to try. And also, I find that a lot of those YouTubes give great tips on great restaurants to check out. Sometimes they are the more popular restaurants, but a lot of times they're off the beaten path restaurants, which I always think are the best
Mhm.
discoveries. Speaking of that, I always recommend too talking to locals, talking to your waitress, or maybe not your waitress, but somebody at the hotel or somebody, that you meet in the bus station or train station and saying, "Hey, you're a local, where do you recommend going?"
Mhm.
And this can be a problem with the language, but if you find an English speaker, it's just nice to ask for local opinions. Um, and I also say, if you do have dietary restrictions or if you do require something special, don't be afraid to ask because 9 times out of 10, they will bend over backwards for you to make sure that you're happy with your meal and you're not getting anything that you can't have. So I would say don't let a fear of food restrictions or anything stop you from traveling or stop you from trying new things.
Okay, great advice. Um, when you were there last month, you told me you visited a couple of attractions that really complemented the culinary experience in your mind. Can you tell us about those?
Sure. We went to the Cathedral of Valencia, which is absolutely beautiful and breathtaking. We also went to the City of Arts and Sciences, which it's sort of like a futuristic complex. And it contains an aquarium, a science museum, an opera house, um, an oceanographique. I can't say it in English. Basically, there was sea. It's like SeaWorld in Valencia. There were, turtles, and we just learned all about how they're conserving, how they're working to save the turtles. They're working to save all of the aquatic life. It's really amazing the things that they're doing to learn about the aquatic life and to help them and really um, it's just impressive. So I would recommend visiting the City of Arts and Sciences. Um, there is a beautiful area called Turia Gardens, and it's located along a former riverbed. And it's in the heart of the city, but it's this beautiful, quiet oasis that you can bike along, walk along, take a little picnic, run. I mean, it's a great kind of little refuge within the city. Um, there are beaches, beautiful beaches. I was also there this past summer with my husband for just a day, and we spent some time on the beach, and just the vibe and spirit of the city in the summer is amazing. So I mean, it was interesting to see it in July and then also in February, kind of two different Valencias, but the same welcoming spirit. So
Uh-huh.
those are just a couple of the highlights, but it's a very walkable city. Lots of bikes around too, bikes that you can rent. Public transportation is very easy. It's easy to get there. If you fly into Madrid or into Barcelona, you can take like about an hour flight from Madrid or Barcelona. And then also I took the AVE, which is a fast-paced train from Madrid to Valencia, about an hour and I think 45 minutes.
Wow, so not much longer than having flown.
No, and I'm telling you, it was a beautiful, wonderful experience. The trains are so clean and just really great. A tip if you are traveling by train, a lot of times, like if you leave Madrid and are going to Valencia, there's many trains going from Madrid to Valencia, many different train lines, and sometimes you might even have two trains leaving at the same time. So be sure to look on your ticket and make sure that you're in line for the right, train line. If it's an AVE or is it a different company.
Hmm.
And sometimes there are multiple stations in a city as well. Last summer, my husband and I showed up at the wrong station to take our train back to Madrid and had to literally just sprint to the other train station. So just, pay attention to the details. It's easy to travel by train, but you just have to be aware of the details.
If you don't speak Spanish, are you at a huge disadvantage with directions and information?
I would say no because number one for the websites, like if you are booking online or anything like that, they always have a button in the upper right-hand corner. If it shows up in Spanish, it will say ES for Espanol. Just click on the drop down and you can get it in English so that can be translated right away. At the train station, there's always somebody that speaks English behind the desk. That was never, I don't think that's a problem. So I would just say give yourself extra time
Okay.
so that you're not in a rush.
Yeah, I have to be honest, it's one of the things that worries me the most traveling is that I'm going to get on the
Yeah.
wrong train or plane or, especially
It's true.
train or subway.
I agree. And even like speaking the language, I often am thinking to myself, oh my gosh, am I on the right? Is this right? So I will always I'm kind of old school. I'll always have a paper printout of my ticket. And then whenever I'm in line, I always double check and just show it to the person next to me and kind of point to the train and just like, is this right?
Hmm.
So, I hear what you're saying and I like to double check that way and just,
Hmm.
yeah.
So do you recommend ordering your tickets online versus going to the station and getting them?
Yes, if you know for sure, that you are flying into Madrid on Tuesday and then you're going right to Valencia, definitely, because that it's sometimes the trains are, booked, they're sold
Oh,
out.
okay.
So yeah, I would definitely, if you can't, just know that, they might be sold out. You might be able to get on. I would just as a security measure, I would order in advance.
Hmm. Okay.
And regarding Madrid, when you land at Barajas Airport, it's very easy to either take a taxi to the train station or to there is a train going from the airport to the train station, like a metro,
Hmm.
uh, or a city bus. So there are definitely ways to do it very simply and affordably.
Okay, great. Good to know. Last year there were a lot of flooding issues in Europe,
Yes.
and I know Valencia was involved a bit. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that happened last fall, and when I heard that there was these terrible floods in Valencia, immediately I thought, "Oh my gosh, the city of Valencia. That's exactly where, I was." It wasn't the city of Valencia. The city of Valencia is part of the region of Valencia. So the city of Valencia was not impacted by the floods. It was the surrounding communities. And I think people at large were like, "Oh, we can't go to Valencia now because it's been flooded." And it was it was fine. But when those floods happened, the city of Valencia jumped to the rescue and helped all the villages. So it was like an amazing effort, just amazing to hear about how hotels and restaurants and the whole city kind of gathered together, to donate lodging or to donate food or to just go help the people in the surrounding villages. And um, so as far as Valencia, the city, everything is, go there, visit. They want visitors, and it's there, and it's fine. Um, and just the surrounding areas they're rebuilding. It was a very serious, devastating disaster, the floods, and they are recovering. But as a whole, they're on the upswing, so that's good news.
Good. That's definitely good news.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you and I got to talk again and to have you share more information about Spain. You have a great perspective because you're a U.S. citizen, but you've spent so much time there over the years and seen it over the course of years. So,
Could I tell you one more thing about my trip that I want
yes, please do.
listeners to know? In addition to visiting the city of Valencia, I had the opportunity to go to a parador. And now, what is a parador? You might be wondering. Throughout Spain, you'll find paradors, and those are it's a type of hotel, and it's usually state owned. That's sort of a unique lodging experience. Some of the paradors used to be historic buildings, some were monasteries, fortresses, or castles, or they could have just been, buildings repurposed to be hotels. So there's special buildings, there's special hotels found throughout Spain that are known for their unique location, kind of sometimes rural at times, outside of a city. So, and also they're known for their sustainability practices and their adherence to trying to do things locally, local cuisine, uh, take care of the area and appreciate all of the beautiful natural surroundings.
Mhm.
So if you can ever get a chance to stay in a parador in Spain, it's well worth it. It's amazing. So I was able to stay at a Parador 20 minutes outside of Valencia, and that was called the Parador El Saler. And the beautiful thing about this, as a golfer and golf writer, they also have a golf course on the
Mm.
grounds. So it was a gorgeous Parador and a gorgeous golf course, I'm sorry. And the unique thing about this property is that it is the Mediterranean Sea is just like right off one of the holes of the golf course. It's in essence it's accessible from the property. It's you just walk down one of the, little paths, and you're walking on the Mediterranean Sea on this lovely beach that's private. It's nobody's really there. So it's a gorgeous little secret. Um, and this Parador itself was just such an example of sustainability and all of the things that they do to practice sustainability. For example, they work with local fishermen and local companies to recycle their fishing nets so that all of the outdoor furniture is recycled fishing nets. So they recycle that. They their golf balls, when they find used golf balls throughout the course, they recycle those. There are so many examples of sustainability and highlighting local products that they've done at this Parador. It was just amazing. At the breakfast buffet, typical European breakfast buffets have, they have fruits, they have pastries. Everyone had like a little label that would tell like why it's local to the area, where it comes from. Just really interesting how they focus on their local products and are really proud of them. They had a special area for celiac. So anyone with gluten or celiac, I mean, everything they did at this Parador was so intentional and so thoughtful for their guests and the environment. Um, they it was just incredible. So um, I would just recommend highly to look at, like, if you're in Valencia, look up the Parador El Saler. Um, and if you're throughout anywhere in Spain, to look up a Parador as an option for really great food and really great and a great experience.
Yeah. What would how how would you recommend people find a Parador? Like often people will use Expedia.com or whatever, but
Yeah,
how does one find one specifically?
there is a website. I'm just looking it up right now to make sure. Okay, yeah, it's a website. And I can give it to you to put on your web, like at the end of the article,
Thank you.
but it's paradores.es. And that's just the plural of parador.
Hmm.
And it translates to English. And it basically, you can find them throughout Spain on this website. Or even if you are staying in Pamplona and you want to say, Parador is close to Pamplona, you'll find them crop up. And just yeah, I would highly recommend it as a unique experience, something that, different than just booking a regular hotel. My
Yeah.
husband and I stayed at one in Lerma, and it was a former palace. So it
Wow.
was this huge, it was just gorgeous and amazing, had a gorgeous courtyard, um, an experience that will, and it was not any more expensive than staying at a hotel, a nice hotel.
That was going to
So
be my next question. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And certainly like off season is a great time to go too, because you're not going there for the beach if you're going for a part, or you're going for the, kind of unique hotel and dining experience. So I would say look at off-season travel as well for special rates.
Hmm.
But as a whole, it's well worth it.
Yeah. Let me ask you about off season. With Valencia in particular, but also maybe it's the same answer for all of Spain. What are the best times of year and worst time, if there is a worse time to go?
Yeah, I would say the summer is a is a not the best time to go because it's especially in the past couple of years. I mean, if you want to go in the summer, by all means, go in the summer. Just know that Europeans come during the summer as well. Like a lot of like Valencia is, it's got gorgeous beaches. Um, it's very crowded in the summer, and it'll be more expensive. Again, not terrible. If you want to go in the summer, it's still a wonderful experience, and there's a magic found in June, July, or August in Spain. So I'm not necessarily saying don't go, but I'm saying I would look into the shoulder seasons. I would say September, October, November are great times to travel in Europe. Um, January through April or May, also great times. And I think the farther away from summer you get on each end, the better deal you'll get and the less people you'll have to contend with.
Mm-hmm. It may
Yeah.
also mean some restaurants and shops are closed, though, right? But from what I've heard, there's
Yeah,
still enough, more than enough that are open.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Just maybe if you are going in really the off season, do some Googling or searching ahead of time just to make sure, what that area will look like. Um, shop wise and restaurant wise, but for the most part, I think it's pretty good. And especially with golf courses, if there's golfers listening, they all of the golf courses I've talked to, or almost all, have said we're pretty much open all year round. It might be cooler, it might be rainy at certain times, but it could be just an interesting off season
Mm-hmm.
time to go if you want to take a golf trip to Spain in February or
Right. Right.
yeah.
Well, and you went golfing in Mallorca in October, and
Yes,
you had a great
yes.
time.
I did. And that, yes, it was great. And then I did go to this Parador, El Saler golfing, and it was great. It was a little windy. I dressed appropriately. It was fine. And I was talking to the man who I was golfing with, who was from England, and he said he was staying, he and his wife were there for 2 weeks. And he told me about the deal that the Parador had for golfers. They had a monthly price, like unlimited golf. I believe it was for around 400 or 450 euros for unlimited golf for a month. Don't quote me on that, but I know it was a fabulous deal. And deals like that exist all throughout the golf courses on the off season. So I would, again, highly encourage people to look into off seasons and special rates that you just might not think about when you're planning your trip.
Hmm. Yeah, great, great tip. Well, before we wrap up and tell people where they can get more information on everything you've talked about today, is there anything else we've missed that you want to tell us about?
I'm sure I'll think about something like 4 minutes after we hang up this call. So, offhand, I cannot think of anything. No. Um, I, yeah, I think I've pretty much covered it. I'm just gonna check out my notes, but I would I would recommend Valencia as a stop on a European vacation or a vacation to Spain. And I'd also like to say, let's say you're traveling to Madrid and you want to spend a week in Madrid. I would say don't rule out Valencia. It's a perfect day trip. Like I said, this summer, my husband and I were staying in Madrid. We took a day trip to Valencia. We took the 6:30 a.m. train. We were back by 8 o'clock at night. So it's something that you can do, you can enjoy in a day, and it's a hop, skip, and a jump from Madrid. And with the fast trains, it's amazingly easy. So
That's
think
great.
about how you can cleverly use the trains to get a lot of cities under your belt in one trip.
That's a great idea. Great idea. Well, and if there's anything else you think of after we hang up, because that always happens to all of us,
Yes.
that's where our articles that accompany all these podcasts come in handy, because the Real Food Traveler podcast is available on iTunes, Amazon, YouTube, Overcast, and just about everywhere you like to listen to podcasts. But we always have an accompanying article on our website, realfoodtraveler.com, which will have some photos that Abby's sharing with us about her time in Valencia that illustrate some of the things she's been talking about today. And we'll also include some links to things that she's talked about, like that link to being able to book a Parador, and to Abby's Substack newsletter, which I'm a subscriber to, and I enjoy reading it every week. So we'll pair the two of those, and if you're listening on a streaming service, we'll link to the article on Real Food Traveler, and if you're on Real Food Traveler, we'll have a link to this podcast. So either way, you'll get all the information. So, Abby, it was a pleasure to see you face to face again, even over Zoom,
Yes.
and to learn more about Spain. And my our trip to Mallorca was basically my first experience with Spain. So you talking to you both times has just whet my appetite for traveling there more and
Yeah, it's a
experiencing
great one.
all the wonderful things and the wonderful food culture. Sounds wonderful. I can't wait to try it
It's
out.
delicious.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thanks for joining us, and maybe we'll see you ahead for some more of your travels.
Yes, great. Thank you so much.